era. And when we're talking about eras, it's just like a big period of time. It's like when you think of a calendar and you have it in months, and then there are like smaller units in a month, which is weeks. That's what an era is. It's like a big period of time. Really big. We're talking millions of years. And then periods would be the smaller units in it. So the first era was the Hadean era. Pretty big. 4.6 to 3.8 billion years ago. And that was pre-life. There wasn't much life on Earth at that time. So just one slide about the Hadean era. Volcanic eruptions and impacts from space debris were common. Atmosphere could not support life, had no oxygen. The gases that were there were just ammonia, methane, carbon dioxide, water vapor. So there were some gases, but it wasn't enough to support life. Surface of the Earth was molten, of course, because of the volcanic eruptions. So again, no life was there because it's all molten. There's not enough oxygen to support life, so no plants and no animals. So the main thing you want to jot down there is no oxygen. It's very important to put the name of the era, the time range, which is 4.6 to 3.8 billion years ago, and then the main points under there. So it's always at the end of the era that something starts to change before a new era starts. So at that point, this is the only era that was no life. The next era, a little bit of life starts to appear. With all that gases and all those things that were in the atmosphere, it starts to condense, starts to rain, precipitate, and then forms the crust of the Earth. And then we're starting a new era. Are we good to move on? Yeah. You don't have to write that down. Just toward the end of the Hadean era, Earth began to cool. This allowed water vapor to condense and rain down, thus creating oceans and lakes. So that's where we start to see a little bit of Earth, our Earth, the Earth that we know, starting to form into the form that we know right now. So this is a visual of how it used to look like. Just volcanic eruptions, an atmosphere that doesn't really support any kind of life, and that was a long time. That was a Hadean era. So Miller and Urey are like two scientists that decided to figure out what is it that, how did the atmosphere look like at that time. So they created this experiment, and they had this water that represented the water from the ocean, because there were oceans at that time, there was water, and then the water would go up here, and they had those electrodes, which is going to simulate the lightning, electricity from lightning. And by applying electricity to the water that has evaporated, there's heat source here, water, evaporation, and by applying electricity and then condense the water back, they discovered that they were able to find some amino acids. And for them, that kind of concluded that just by having some inorganic materials, just water, applying electricity to it, they were able to get some amino acids. What are amino acids building blocks for? protein. So that's organic. So they were able to say that life started through something that happened in the atmosphere, just electricity, just some lightning. It's a theory, it has some evidence to it, but it's not a law. I can say that's 100% what happened. So we use some terms there, like they suggested, it is said to be, but it's a theory. So they created a closed system to model conditions on early Earth to produce organic molecules. So again, they knew that there was methane, ammonia, hydrogen, and water vapor. They added the electrical current to simulate lightning. This experiment formed several organic molecules, including many amino acids. And further on, they were able to find even nucleotides. What are nucleotides? Building blocks for DNA. So basically what they came up with is that inorganic materials somehow changed into organic materials because of the application of lightning. You could just draw a very simple picture of it. Just a heat source, water, that is basically ocean water, because that was the only thing that was available at that time. Electrodes to simulate electricity. And then in the condenser, you can put amino acids and nucleotides. Another thing that represents is that when life started, most probably, again it's a theory, so most probably it started in the ocean, not on Earth. It started in the ocean because that was ocean water that they used. When you're done writing down, bring out your second piece of paper. And we're going to divide it into the 4 eras that we're talking about today. They're not equal in time, so we're going to represent that on the paper. First area, you're going to give it the biggest spot. So I would say like 1/3 of your paper, and then draw the line. And that would be your pre-Cambrian era. Then the second era is going to be a little shorter. I'm going to make a smaller space here. And then the third is going to be a little smaller. And the fourth one, you can have it like maybe 2 or 3 lines. It's pretty small. Try and make it relative. The biggest, and then smaller, and then a little smaller. And then the fourth one is going to be the shortest one. The fourth and the biggest one you can put pre-Cambrian. C. Precambrian, Precambrian. Paleozoic, you're going to write down under each section, so just leave some space for writing. I'm just going to put down some bullet points. Third one is going to be the Mesozoic, Mesozoic. Again, make it a little bit smaller than the Paleozoic. And the fourth one is it's going to be called the Cenozoic, Cenozoic. So it's the four main eras of life. Again, Precambrian, Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and Cenozoic. It's going to be written up on the slides as well, so if you can't really read, it's going to be up on the slide. So the Precambrian era, now we're starting life. Now the Hadean era was the era where there was no life at all, there was no support of life, there was no oxygen. Now the Precambrian era, the biggest part, the one that you left quite a big space on your paper for, contributed to 80% of the time. So it's the earliest life. Just jot down the name of the era, and it's important to put down the years. So 3,800 to 540 MYA, that's million years ago. Okay? And in each slide of these, you're going to pick out one or two things that interests you. So we're not going to put everything on the slides, but just a couple things that interest you in this era. So in each era, again, eras are the big units. Eras are the months, like the months. And then the periods are going to be the subunits. The periods are going to be the smaller parts in it. So in the Precambrian era, there was the one period called Precambrian period. We're going to put number one, the Precambrian period. So put the period and the time range, which is 3,800 to 540 million years ago. So again, we're going to do a little activity on that later on. I'm going to put a piece of yard, like all the way between those two walls, okay, representing the eras. So if we're thinking the Precambrian era, it's going to take all the way from over there to up probably here. Time and life. And then Paleozoic, just like on your paper, it's going to take probably up to here. And Mesozoic, all the way up to here. And then the Cenozoic is probably going to be just the last part here. That's where we live. So where man lives with the current organisms and creatures that we have right now is just the end part of all the eras and periods of life on Earth. So at that time, it was only single-celled organisms that was present. Only bacteria. Nothing more complex than that. You don't have to write that down. Just know that it contributed to 80% of Earth's entire history. 80%. And after the 80%, we still have 3 eras to go. And we are the last one of them, and the smallest. So you can imagine how much time was there before we were even existing. So this is an example of the organisms that were present at that time? The bacteria. The bacteria was expected to be the blue-green algae. Does anybody know anything about the blue-green algae? What it does? It makes oxygen of itself. That kind of brings something there. That's the first time we're talking about oxygen. So what are you expecting to happen here? Life starts to happen. Because bacteria was supporting it with oxygen. But again, it's bacteria. It's giving out a lot of oxygen, but then life is starting to happen. And then you can see there are some creatures that do not exist now. They have their own invertebrates, some animals that do not have backbones yet, and then some creatures that look very odd, and it was only present at that time. There's oxygen, and the first sign of life was in the ocean. No life on Earth yet. Now, endosymbiosis, and write that down. That's a term that we're going to define in a moment. It's a relationship in which one organism lives in the body of another. It's related to that era, and we're going to find why in just a minute. It's a relationship in which one organism lives within the body of another. Now, besides the nucleus, where did you learn that DNA was found?
Bacteria just goes around inside of it.
What's that?
Instead of bacteria, just goes around inside of it.
Bacteria? Okay. But in a cell. Where's that? The mitochondria. Exactly.
Are these nuts going on the divided paper?
Yes.
Alright.
So under each era and under each period. So the mitochondria has DNA that's in the animal cell. In the plant cell, you can go back a little bit. Where else did you find DNA besides chloroplasts? So now that brings us to what made them think of endosymbiosis. So they thought that, again, the definition is a relationship in which one organism lives within the other. So the theory, again, that said the eukaryotic cell and bacteria, it was able to engulf it. And then over generations, the bacteria evolved as mitochondria. And that is endosymbiosis. So according to endosymbiosis, mitochondria evolved from bacteria. That is for the eukaryotic cell. If it was a plant cell, it would engulf another kind of bacteria. In that case, it's cyanobacteria, and then it evolved as chloroplasts. So in that era, they thought that mitochondria and chloroplasts evolved as a result of endosymbiosis. So again, that's the first sign of life, first sign of something more complex. You can jot down just this pretty small sketch. A cell engulfing bacteria, and then bacteria evolving into mitochondria if it was an animal cell, or a chloroplast if it was a plant cell. Again, in which era is that happening? Precambrian. So first sign of life was oxygen from bacteria, blue-green algae to be specific, and the second sign of life was through endosymbiosis. The second second one is the Paleozoic era. Just put Paleozoic, put 540 407 million years ago. Compared to the one before, is it shorter or larger? Shorter, way much shorter. So that's why we did this visual on your papers there. It's relatively shorter. You're going to put Cambrian period, that's number one. And you're going to pick one or two things of what we're going to go through right now, just to kind of give you an outline of how life used to look at that time. So, the extension of first grade, expansion of marine life. So again, every single time an era is going to end, a new one is going to start, it's because there is a massive extinction of whatever used to live in that era. So something dramatically changed, and that's what starts a new era. First, animals with hard skeleton, like mollusks, corals, like squid, octopus, clams, started to appear. And note that every time life is appearing in the beginning, it's mainly marine. It's mainly in the ocean. The first chordates evolve, first things that have backbone. First traces of plants. Again, they are marine plants. No sign of life on Earth yet. One or two things. You don't have to put everything. Just number down the periods, because there are 6 periods in this era. Okay, are we good to go? No? Think we're good?
Yeah.
Okay. So those are visuals of what used to exist in that time. Again, are they in the sea, are they in the ocean, or are they on land? Mainly in the sea. Again, things they don't look the same right now. Okay? Things have changed. Those are a million years ago. Those are visuals of like that's how a squid used to look like, and other invertebrates. All right, second period, or division period. Put the name of the period, the time range, from 505 to 440 million years ago. Is it getting shorter? Is it getting longer? Getting shorter as we go. The first land-based plants. So, in that period, the first sign of something living on land. So whatever used to live in the ocean now is giving life to be on land. There's a diversity of marine life. Things are starting to change and have more complex structures. And it's the first appearance for jawless fish, fish that do not have jaws. Put number 2, or division period. One or two things that interests you there. Number 3, the Silurian period. Put the name, 440 to 407 million years ago. And now more complexity is coming in. The jawed fish appear. First land animals, which is going to be the arthropods, insects. vegetation on it. But first appearance for insects. And for marine, it's getting to be more complex. From jawless, which is primitive, a primitive sign, primitive look of a fish, into jawed fish. Move on. Yes, Joe? Again, visuals of what things used to look like here. You don't see that often, but probably that would used to exist at that time. So it has jaws. Not the typical kind of jaws that we've seen in pictures of fishes, but it's a jawed fish. A jawed fish, jawless, jawed fish. Octopus more likely to look like what we see nowadays. So it's going into more complexity, looking a little bit more than what it looks like right now. Vegetation, that's new. So starting from marine vegetation, a little bit to more onto the earth, more on that. And you can put, this is going to be number 4, period number 4. The Devonian period, 407 to 360. We're getting closer to our time. Amphibians appear. So the first animals that can live on both land and in the ocean. First time amphibians appear. Fish groups, of course, they continue to develop. Insects. First, forests. So now vegetation is getting bigger. Forests on land and advanced plants. Where is life developing the fastest? In the ocean. Because that's where it started. So it has more time to evolve. We're good? So amphibians, not exactly what they look like right now, but animals that can support life both on land and in the ocean. And there's diversity of life that is on both land and ocean. Insects, forests. They did not used to be that big before, but now it's the first time that forests appear. This is a picture of times where things started to extinct dramatically, and there's no explanation why, except that something like a meteor could have hit and killed quite a big range of marine life. And then another era would start or something else would start. So that's an explanation. Bella.
How long was that period?
Go back. 407 to 360. Again, put MYA. You can put a key like at the very beginning. MYA is million years ago. Just a quick cartoon there. So the amphibian is coming out. It says, "Come out, folks. It looks like we're the first what? First ones here." And then they're saying, "First ones here, it's been here for 50 million years. I wonder what they eat." The Carboniferous period, 360 to 286 million years ago. First appearance to mammal-like reptiles. We're still in the same era, Paleozoic. So this would be your number 5, period number 5. Out of 6, you have one more, and then this is it for the era. 6 periods in this era. So number 5, the Carboniferous period, 360 to 286 million years ago, mammal-like reptiles begin to dominate land, so it's more going into land right now. Fish reptiles develop and colonize land. Amphibians evolve. They started in the previous period, now they're evolving. Trees dominate. Ferns, first seed-bearing plants. Now they have seed, what's going to happen? Reproduction. And then number 6, the Permian period. Again, put the time, 286 to 245 million years ago. Marine life, the way they looked, starts to disappear. So not all marine life, but the way they looked, they start to disappear, and mammal-like reptiles are going to start dominating land. We are at the end of this era. What do you think happened? Extinction. So every time we are at the end of the era, massive extinction of whatever used to dominate, whatever used to live at that time happens. And then something else is going to start for the next era. What is the next era? Mesozoic. Shorter or bigger? Okay. Some visuals, of course, of what used to live there. So mammal-like, they're starting to stand up on feet. They have a backbone, a little bit closer to what we have right now. Forests, extensive. Now they are seed-bearing, they can reproduce. So they dominate land. This is a fossil of an animal. Diverse structures of insects. So it's really starting to populate land here. The Mesozoic era, 245 to 65 million years ago.
Can I see the last one on U.S.A.?
The notes or the video? This? Okay. Okay. So this one has 3 periods for your note. Just 3 periods. The first one, number 1, the Triassic period. Again, we're putting down the dates. Primitive, true mammals evolved. Mammal-like reptiles, and note there, dinosaurs appear. They're not dominating yet, but they're here. So just smaller sized dinosaurs. Reptiles diversify, so anything from the previous time they start to diversify, and then more of this seed-bearing plants.
Is there a reason it has tri in the name? Like, is there 3 or something?
The Triassic?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think tri is pre, but tri
like 3.
3? Not that I know of, but I can look that up. As a matter of fact, when it comes to this, to our period, which is the Cenozoic, they call it the Tertiary and Quaternary. So it's really 3 and 4. But I'll look up what it refers to. Yes?
Is it possible it's because there are 3 periods in this era?
Not really, because the Triassic period is the name of this period only. It would have made sense if it was the Triassic era, because it has 3 periods in it. But this is the name of that actual period. But I'll look it up, but personally, I really encourage you to look it up too. So good to move on. So that's some visuals. So mammals, true mammals, reproduce. Dinosaurs starting to look a little bit closer to what we see in movies and pictures, or they're not the T-Rex kind yet, just the smaller kind. Which period do you think where that they dominated, like, kind of the Jurassic? This is the one that's coming up here. So number 2 is the Jurassic period. 210 to 144, getting closer to our time. First birds evolved. Haven't heard of birds before in the previous periods. Dinosaurs reached gigantic forms. They dominate. And then number 3 is the last period. What's the word that you're expecting to see in the last period of an era? Extinction. So extinction of dinosaurs and marine reptiles. More flowering plants, modern plants. Okay, 2 up here. Modern mammal, ones that look a little bit more to nowadays mammals. Dinosaurs continue to diversify. Bird groups evolve. Somebody asked, how did the dinosaurs diversify? It diversified and then extinction. So extinction was the end of the era. You can put it at the end of what your notes have. Were you done with your notes? No? Go back. Okay, moving on. Now that's close to what we see in the pictures and the movies of that time. Now, I think that was the main character in Jurassic Park, right? First, appearance of birds, not typically what we see now, not four-feathered, of course, but that's the first involvement at that period, and I believe that was the one that was vegetarian in the movie. And then more mammal-like, like more like what we see nowadays, what kind of animals that we see. All right, so this visual just shows you the difference in sizes. So you have, when it first evolved, that's a dinosaur, but that's when it first evolved. And that's when it was dominated. That's the height of a regular man. Different sizes. But up until this moment, what's the biggest animal?
Blue whale.
Blue whale. Still, the biggest one, still the same. Interesting. Yeah, they did. You mean the whales? That's one thing that stayed. And there's an exception to the rule, but that's one thing that just stayed there. That's why it was interesting to put it out there, because it did not extend. It was and always have been the biggest mammal. Still is. So again, what happens at the end of an era? Extinction. Something happens. Usually what we say is a meteor that hit and kind of caused the massive extinction. Okay, the Cenozoic era, which is the last era, 65 million years ago to present. Only 65 million years ago. It's the smallest. Yep.
Period
here and probably do that for next time. So just put Cenozoic era and the time, 16